Scream Factory, the horror sub-label from Shout Studios, has unleashed a new 4K UHD release of the 1986 cult classic that is Night of the Creeps. Night of the Creeps is a science fiction horror film that mixes the subgenres of zombie, alien invasion, a little bit of slasher in there, and killer slugs. And it does all of this with a pretty healthy dose of comedy. And it doesn't take that comedy... Now, some people may disagree with this, but to me, it doesn't feel like it takes the comedy too far. It doesn't go into the spoof territory. Not that there is a place for spoofs, but it doesn't quite go there. It kind of, maybe in some places, kind of pushes the edge to that, but it doesn't go too far, I don't think, anyway. And it does have some scenes that do carry some weight. Now, I don't know if I'm going to dip too far into the spoilery part of those scenes, but I will say the question is, are these scenes heavy-handed, or do they take this film to a completely different level? Now, you tell me that. And if you would do me a favor, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Night of the Creeps was directed by Fred Dekker. It was his first film, but most people probably are, they may be more familiar with the Monster Squad. Now, you can check out my channel. I did a review on this Kino Lorber release of the Monster Squad, but both of these films, this one and this one, I think a lot of people are familiar with these, especially once they started playing these on cable, and I've seen them both lots of times when I was younger. Now, after the Monster Squad, he did one other film as a director, and that was RoboCop 3. Now, RoboCop 3 apparently isn't very well liked, even though I did watch this again recently, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. And the good thing about this one, and the good and the bad thing, is that it's only rated PG-13. It doesn't quite carry over the gruesomeness of the first one and the second one, and all the foul language and the graphic violence, which I think are great in the first two. But the good thing about this one is younger kids can watch it, and it does have a good sense of adventure, a nice sense of adventure, especially that you see in films like the Monster Squad. And unfortunately, after this, he hasn't directed anything else. But that's the weird thing for me when you think about films that you're more familiar with from childhood. Now, that's a weird thing for me. When I think about films that I'm more familiar with from childhood, you would think that a director that you've seen these films so many times, they would have gone on to just keep doing more cool stuff, right? But unfortunately, it kind of stopped there. He does lend his writing to some other films. He's written a lot of other films, and including he did participate in the 2018 The Predator, one of their newer Predator films. He did participate in that, so he was one of the writers, but he hasn't really directed anything since, and I don't know. I mean, that to me, it's a little disheartening. Night of the Creeps stars Jason Lively. Jason Lively's probably best known, maybe for this, but probably for playing Russ Griswold in the sequel to National Lampoon's Vacation, the National Lampoon's European Vacation. He played the second Russ, and he's probably best known for playing that character. And he's got a good screen presence in both films. And also, what most people connect this film to is Tom Atkins, who is a horror film veteran. He's starring in Halloween 3 and The Fog and a bunch of other horror movies like My Bloody Valentine 3D. But Tom Atkins plays Detective Cameron in this one. He's like a police detective wearing a beige trench coat, and he's got his signature mustache in this one. He's also in I think the first Die Hard film. But most people, when they think of this film, they probably think of Tom Atkins because he stills the film. He doesn't show up on screen in this movie until about 30 minutes in. But once he does, he stills almost every scene that he's in, or every scene that he's in, he does still it. I'm sure a lot of you are here for the details about the 4K transfer to this film, and I will say the 4K transfer here does not disappoint. This is a new 4K restoration from the original camera negative, which is approved by writer-director Fred Dekker. And there's a Blu-ray and a 4K in here, and they both have that same transfer. Now, there was a previous Blu-ray release by Scream Factory which didn't have this new restoration, but I will say that original 4K looks pretty good in HD. And really, when I was looking at, I did like flip between them. I'd put one in and then put the other of the Blu-rays in, and I didn't see a lot of difference in the two transfers. I mean, there's some, but I didn't see a great deal of difference between the two Blu-rays. But when it comes to this 4K transfer, the new 4K restoration, now there is a big difference, especially with the HDR. The HDR here is probably the best thing about the new 4K transfer, because it just brings out the flesh tone so much. And when you look at say the Blu-ray, it's not that the Blu-ray looks bad. Now I'm going to say the Blu-ray looks really good, but just looking at the flesh tones by themselves and just the color, that it's more vibrant in this 4K upgrade, and then more I guess what do you call it, more realistic looking in a way, but also you see more texture right away. You see more texture. The very first scenes, like aliens on a spaceship who are flying with these slug things that they end up getting away from them. But like I think one alien's like a bad alien. He ejects the slugs onto Earth. But even these alien kind of costumes or puppets, whatever they are, you see a lot of texture on the aliens, like just right away. And then it cuts to like the outside of the campus, and you see like Jason Lively's characters wearing like some kind of sweater, and you just see this texture on the sweater and on their faces. There's a lot of detail here. Now the density levels are very nice here. You see there's a lot of clarity throughout the pixels. Everything is very enhanced. You see a lot more detail, and especially on faces, you see a lot more texture in people's faces. And it's everything's, for the most part, pretty sharp. It's pretty sharply in focus compared to some. I don't know. I saw like the recent the sorority house massacre. I didn't see a lot of detail on faces, a lot of texture on faces. It looked almost like close to being kind of soft focus. But here everything looks fantastic. Now there's a lot of film grain. You do see the film grain here, but it looks very, very filmatic. I guess you see it, but it doesn't distract. At least it didn't to me. When you look on the Blu-ray, the film grain is much thicker looking throughout, because I guess there's less details, so the film grain is more, maybe a little more overbearing. Now earlier on in this film, now there's a lot of different lighting scenarios in here. You first have the aliens, which seem fairly naturally lit, and then when it cuts to outside of the campus, that looks fairly naturally lit for outside. I think there's maybe on that first scene, it's kind of lit by the outside lights of the school, so it doesn't look very blue. But a lot of the exterior nights do have that kind of teal blue going, which worked really well, and I really like that kind of look for exterior nights. And then you go into a club, and the club's all lit, all funky. It's all purple and different types of lighting. You do have that going on. But when you see the close-ups of people and things of that nature, you got that one guy with like the friggin', he's got like a unibrow all the way. You see the unibrow looks pretty convincing. It may have even been a real unibrow, but you see those hairs pretty good. Now, you do see a lot of, just in general, you see a lot of detail here. Just look at the actors' hair, like especially the lead actress, Jill Winslow playing Cynthia. You look at her hair, you see so much detail in her hair, and also in Jason Lively's hair. I was looking at, especially I think some of the exterior night scenes, I was like, wow, that's you see a lot of detail. It's very, very impressive transfer. Not to say that the original one was bad. That one was, it is HD, and it does bring out more detail than say an SD video one. And clearly the bigger the screen you have, the more detail you're probably going to see. The black levels here are really good. They're not crushed. They look just They got them very, especially in the 4K, in the shadow areas, you do see a lot of shadow play. You see a lot of details in the darker areas, which is pretty cool. But I will say that HDR, it does look a little darker than the Blu-ray version. But it looks darker in the shadowy areas, but it actually has more detail in shadowy areas. I was reading about the HDR, and it seems like there's a certain setting on your TV. Like if you're thinking it's too dark, you can change it to another setting. I didn't think it was too dark. I thought the darkness was fine. It worked great for the film. It actually did in certain areas, like when you're outside at night and you got like half shadows of people's faces, it needs to be darker. But I did like check some settings on my TV just to double check this. I actually set it to an HDR setting, and I went back and it looked exactly the same. I didn't see any difference. So It may not be the case here. I didn't think, but again, I didn't think it was overly dark, but I thought the dark was just enough dark. And the colors just generally just kind of pop out at you sometimes. They just they look very nice. And speaking of colors popping out at you, the opening sequence is black and white. Well, the first sequence has the aliens on the spaceship, and for some reason that's color. But once that pod lands on Earth, it cuts to like a black and white sequence from 1959. And this is kind of where the alien invasion thing comes from, because the alien invasion films were very popular in the 50s specifically, maybe 50s and 60s. But here I really like the way they have the opening in black and white. It's pretty cool. And you're introduced to Tom Atkins' character, who plays a cop as a younger version of him briefly. But it was cool too when the opening credits are coming. They're overlaid. Some of the opening credits are overlaid over this black and white sequence, and those credits are in pretty vibrant color over this black and white opening sequence, which is pretty cool. But basically, what happens, and this is like kind of a 50s science fiction setup. You know, you got the teenagers, you got a girl and a guy they're going out to Lover's Lane or whatever, and then that's when Tom Atkins' cop comes up and he's like, "Hey, there's something going on, like a serial killer or a mental patient's been like he's basically escaped from the mental institute, and he's out with he's an axe murderer and he's trying to kill people." And that's kind of where the slasher thing comes in. The slasher thing's kind of light here, but there is a little bit going on with it. But then Tom Atkins' cop character, he's played by a different actor here, but he sees the girl, and the girl is his ex-girlfriend. He's like, "Oh," sort of thing. It was a pretty good reaction from this actor. But then after he leaves, they see a comet thing or come and land, which is the alien slug thing on the ground. And then they go to investigate. The guy wants to go investigate. The girl's not into it, but he leaves her in the car, and then he goes and looks, and then the slug things come out and attack him. They go into his mouth, and then while she's sitting in the car, the girl, like the axe murderer, comes up and kills her. And that's and then it cuts to 1986 and present, which is present day for this film. And then what happens is the guy who got the slugs things into his mouth is kind of in this science lab. They got him in a container, and as a pledge prank, the two main characters, Jason Lively and the character JC, played by Steve Marshall, they go in. They're having to find a cadaver for like a pledge prank, and then they accidentally release the guy who has the slugs, and then it kind of escalates from there. And another film that's kind of reminds me, another film that kind of takes this in a similar direction, maybe a little bit better than this film, but it's a later film called Slither by James Gunn. Now this film does a similar thing, just a bigger budget, and it was pretty much a bigger budget, more gruesome effects and things of that nature. But it's kind of similar with when it comes to slugs taking over people. But it's kind of some weird rules going on with this film. Like, say the slugs go into people's brains, and then they incubate, and then they come out of their heads, and their heads explode, and then the slugs go in, and then they find another person, and then they incubate. Or they apparently can do it in any brain. They can do it in dogs or cats or whatever. And but what's weird is so the serial killer is killed. Like the cop character played by Tom Atkins has killed this guy, and he's buried him under the ground. And apparently the slugs go down there and they go into his brain, even though he doesn't have a brain anymore because it's been a long time and his brain's decomposed. But somehow they're able to bring him back. It's a cool idea to bring him back, but it's because sometimes they're kind of loosey goosey with the rules to this thing here. Which as long as you don't let it bother you too much and just have fun with it. This film is a lot of fun, and I've always enjoyed it. And Tom Atkins, once his detective comes on, he just really puts a lot into it, and he brings a lot to the film, and he's just a larger than life personality here. Now the character is living with this grief of his ex-girlfriend getting killed, and then him hunting down and killing the killer and burying them. So he's kind of holding on to that, and it's kind of bothered him as a cop that he crossed the line and did the revenge thing. And so he's holding that. So I don't know if it really messes the character up. It gives him some depth, but I personally like him just being a badass and doing what he does. But I mean, him being borderline suicidal, I don't like that as much. But it's kind of cool. I mean, it works within the film. but I prefer him just being like a badass cop. But his borderline suicidal tendencies, which happen later in the film because of his depression, a little concerning, I think. But I do like Tom Atkins' performance here, and I think he doesn't necessarily make the whole film. I think most of the other performances are very good. Like the chemistry between Jason Lively and Steve Marshall is really good. Even Jill Whitlow, but even Jill Whitlow, I really like her performance here. All right, now let's take a look at this packaging. Now, if you check out this slipcover here, I dig this, and it's the same. This is the original poster, and you can see here they got a copy of it. You can, if you go directly to the Scream Factory or Shout Factory site, you can order a bundle that has this poster and this poster in it, and then also you can get some Tom Atkins like character, Detective Cameron's doll. I mean, not dolls. They're kind of I guess collectible figures, which I'll show you in just a minute. But here, all right, we got a slip cover. On the inside, we have the same deal. There's not, I don't think, yeah, there's not, it's just white on the inside. Now, so there's 3 discs. There's the 4K UHD disc. There's a Blu-ray disc of director's cut only. They don't have the original cut. And then here is a Blu-ray of the special features. For anyone familiar with the original cut, the only difference is the ending. Now, the ending in the original cut, which some people may be more familiar with, it really sucks. The director's cut ending is a lot better, and it's only like maybe a minute or 2 extra stuff, but it really makes the movie. The ending to the original ends with this dog coming up. The dog really kind of ridiculous anyway, because you got some continuity errors. Like everyone else, the slugs come out of them, their head explodes. This dog, the slugs come out, he stays good. He can just go around spitting slugs out. But at the very end, the main characters look down and this dog's there, and he spits some slugs into him. So that's how it ends, and that's a shitty ending. In this ending, it ends better for the main characters, and it also ends up giving hope to humanity in a way. I'm not going to necessarily tell you exactly what happens at the end, but it has a more hopeful ending in the director's intended version that he wasn't able to finish when he first shot it because he didn't quite have the budget and he couldn't convince them that was what was needed to be done. I think sometime later when they were doing a television cut, he was able to go in and add that the way that he had intended. Here's an alternate slipcover. It's the same as this poster back here. Now this includes the 1959 scene, and this is like when they see the comet, or it's not really a comet. It's like the canister that contains the slug creatures, like coming into the Earth's atmosphere, and they think it's a comet, and they go to check it out. And I really like this. This is a cool cover, even though it doesn't represent the film. I do just kind of like it as an alternate cover. On the inside of this, check this out. There's the alien in the background. The alien's only seen briefly at the beginning, but they're kind of cool looking. I like them. On the inside cover of this, this is the original Blu-ray. I just kind of took the alternate slipcover and put it over the original Blu-ray, and I'm going to keep it like that on my shelf because I don't have a slipcover for this. Now this is a kind of an alternate cover for Night of the Creeps that has just the date. A guy in a tux. This is also kind of a prom movie because they start to go to the prom and then they're all decked out for the prom. And it's like, the good news is your date is here. The bad news is he's dead. And that's a line from the film. Even that Tom Atkins says that, and he actually says the good news is your dates are here. The bad news is they're dead. So it's pretty awesome delivery when he does that. And this is the Blu-ray. You got a disc with this one actually has the original cut and the director's cut on different disc, and on the inside you have that same cover that's on this new one here. Now also on the Scream Factory site, in addition to these posters, you can also get a bundle that includes Detective Ray Cameron, the character played by Tom Atkins. You can get these figures that have him in here. Here's the original figure that if you bought this Blu-ray back in the day when it was first released, you could get this one. This is a re-release of this that you can now purchase again. And then they've also released a new one that is the dream sequence version. It says Detective Ray Cameron Dream Sequence. And this is the first time you see him in the film. He's dressed in this white tuxedo. And it even comes with a drink. He's sitting there drinking like a drink on the beach. And then he sees his ex-prom date, and one that was killed, that come out of the water. Yeah, that's the... so this... you can get both of these Tom Atkins figures from Scream Factory. It's I don't know, they're pretty cool, right? So let's go ahead and rate the film. I'm gonna give this film on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 star rating, probably leaning towards a 4. But I do like the film. I think that it is a great, for the first film from a director, it is a really great first film. It is maybe lacking in some areas, but at the same time, this film is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy watching it. It's one that I can rewatch again, because I really like the chemistry between the cast members. Tom Atkins is friggin' terrific in it. There's some pretty cool special effects in some areas, but there are some effective scenes, and I think overall it is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy the opening sequence a lot. The black and white part, that part is really good, and even like the ending part with the when they're all having to fight a bunch of zombie guys, like who have zombies in their heads, come and attack the sorority house. That's a lot of fun. Now, as far as what Scream Factory's done here, I'm going to give them probably a 4.5 star rating. Their 4K transfer is excellent. These are some cool Tom Atkins figures, and then there's these posters. I like both of them. This is the original one. I do like this kind of the 50 or late 50s scene. So it's all very nice. But if you could do me a favor and go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.